Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, we are going to talk about a case study that I've done. Not one specific case study. And one thing I want to tell you, remember that these videos are in no real particular order. You know, it's not necessarily saying if you got to watch this video, you won't understand the next video. Remember that this is totally up to you and your course. I think that this is a good progression, but I also realize that, if you want to get some more information before you get into a case study, bounce around, check everything out. At the same time, also remember that this is going to be a really good one to come back to later on. I think after you've watched all the videos, you'll come back to this case study and you'll say, oh, okay, I see what he was doing there. That makes a lot of sense. So I just want to say that because I think it's important to remember that this is your course and different people learn at different speeds. So today I want to talk about the video merger case study. Okay, this was one of the coolest reskinning case studies or reskinning projects I ever worked on because it followed the exact model that I'm explaining about, the reskin model, how it all worked. And so what I want to do is I want to walk through that for you, and I want to show you how this happened, all the decisions that were made, and how the model works itself. The goal of this video, by the end of this, what I really want you to see is how the model works. And I want you to see that it's a living thing, that it can happen when you follow the progress and the tenets of all this, or tenets I should say, that it works. I want to show you exactly how I did it, and I want you to see how you can do it too. Those are the three things that I want you to get out of this video. And more importantly, I've been using the same model for buying codes from $200, literally even less than $200, like $5, or open source even, all up to $10,000 I've spent on codes, and had the same exact outcome. Now, that's not to say every time. By no means have I been 100% batting average. There's been a lot of wins, a lot of failures, but it's been the same no matter how big or how small the project was, and it always comes down to the same basic. Whatever you want to call it, the same basic tenets of all is, it is a model, okay? This is not a get rich quick thing. This isn't a trick. This isn't a hack. This is a model built on business and economics and all that. The second thing is that it doesn't always happen like this, okay? This is the kind of the sweeping top level stuff, but if you ask anyone exactly how their app reskinning project went, it might have some different nuances than this. So just keep that in mind, that this isn't the exact thing, but just to follow this as you go, and you'll see what I'm saying is that the basic premise and the operations of this are the same. The model kind of goes through everything that way. Because even my biggest apps follow the same model. Kingdom Coins, if you guys haven't downloaded this already, one of my absolute total home run apps. I reskinned this, and it's been a very, very lucrative app to reskin. And I did the exact same thing with this app that I did with Video Merger, which I think is why I get really excited about it too, because once you get used to the small apps and getting really good at the small apps, you can just go to the big apps and say, look, I'm just going to put a few zeros on the end of those revenue checks, and it gets a lot more fun that time. So let's just dive in. Let's just talk about the video merger source code, okay? So what this does is the code itself just basically adds music to video. So you can take a video on your phone or whatever, your iPad, and you can add some video very easily to that to the video in your app. You can kind of make like a music video or whatever you want to call it. There's a light and a pro version, which means there's a free version, there's a paid version. There's some in-app purchases. You can buy music in there. And then we've got some ads in there. We just kind of threw some ads in just to kind of see what would happen. So why did I choose to develop this code? And that's what people always ask me. They go, hey, how do you choose what to develop? And the best part is I didn't choose to develop this code. And the reason I'm telling you this is because you don't have to either. When you make your decision to start reskinning, you don't necessarily have to develop anything. You can make a decision on, hey, what source code should I buy? And that's how I made. Now, granted, it was different because I didn't go to a source code marketplace. I found someone independently, kind of by accident. But I started to notice some patterns in the market, specifically like social media and video apps, and these idea of creating your own moments were really hot. I thought that was just like a cool trend that I was noticing, and Instagram was kind of leading the charge on that, right? And I saw apps like this, but they were getting pretty good downloads, but they're making good money. So what I mean by that is like the downloads might not have been huge, but the revenue associated with those numbers was good. For example, let's say they only got 15 downloads, but they made $10. that's pretty good because, if it makes 50 downloads, it's going to make 35 bucks. So it was just a really good ratio. And I was like, oh, well, there's clearly something to this. So I asked around. I started, talking to some developers, designers, just kind of saying, hey, what's going on with this video Instagram thing? And I finally came across somebody that had a video code for purchase. It was actually a designer of mine. He said, hey, I've got this code. I don't really know what I'm doing. Are you interested? And, I thought that was really cool. And the code was making a few $100, a few bucks a day. I could easily improve this. I was like, I could totally make this better. I could make the marketing better. I could clean it up. I could make the code better. And so I bought it from him for $800, right? And I said, okay, just let me get $800 and we'll rock this out. What I want to note right before I say this, right? Like, you can totally do this too. When I say you can go buy source codes, you can go on Blue Cloud, you can buy source codes there. You can go somewhere else and buy them if you want. But you don't have to do that, right? Like, you can go find a trend and you can say, I want to get a source code. And you can cold call people. I mean, I've done that as well. You can go to someone and say, hey, I'll license your source code. The problem with that is that, it's going to be really difficult to find someone. It's going to take a ton of time. It's often going to be a lot more expensive because they can't sell it to multiple people. So they have to make their money on like a one-time deal. But, you can go out and you can call people. And then you determine the updates. You say, look, how can I make this better? Like, just like I said, I can do better on the marketing, or I can make the monetization, I can clean up the code. But you can do this exact identification process where you find a really cool trend or you find a good monetization strategy and say, how do I get a source code? These days, your best bet is to find a code on a website like Blue Cloud, but you can always do it your own way. So the first step in this case study was I purchased a really solid source code it was in a good market, that had a good trend, that had something that, I was really excited about. And the second step, once I got that source code, was I needed to add value. I needed to make it better. I needed to add features to it. I needed to look at the reviews, and I needed to make it unique. I needed to update it and make it something, okay, well, it's getting 15 downloads a day. Why don't we get it up to like 80 or 100? How do we do that? And this is how you do it with the second step, and you add all these features, and you make that core code much, much better, which is exactly what I did. So I did that, and then I obviously, made the graphics a little bit better. I retitled it, changed the keywords once I did some research, and I submitted it, and then I released it into the App Store. And what happened was it was great. Just you can see the revenue kind of speaks for itself. It was consistent. That was what was so great about it. And I knew I had a great product because it wasn't like all at once, or hey, I got some promotion or whatever. This was consistent revenue and consistent downloads, which was really great to see. That I was just sitting on like a really good, like it was a solution to people's problems. And I didn't even update this for a full year. I just I put it out there after updating it initially, when I first got the initial code and cleaning that up and making it better. But after that, I didn't update it for a full year just because I didn't have time to do that. And I'm saying, like, if I had sat down and said, oh man, I should update this every month, I mean, you can imagine that graph would be going, straight up to the right. I mean, that revenue would just be climbing and climbing. I just didn't have the time to do it. So, and then, there's obviously, positive correlation between different price points. So, the higher the price of the in-app purchase or whatever it may be, you're going to make more money on that. So, like I said, one of the keys I saw was a great ratio of downloads to dollars. I saw lots of usage happening. The math kind of speaks for itself. And to be perfectly honest, you guys, like, I'm not a big believer in saying like, oh, this made this much money and that's why it's good. I think it's really important to prove to somebody that, hey, this code is proven in the marketplace, and that's why it's a good investment, because that's just how the market shows you that it's a good product. But I don't want you to think like, well, that's how much money I'm going to make, because that's not how it always works out by any means. But in this case, the investment was $800, and I made $3,500 over the course of basically a year. That's an awesome return. Like I was really pumped with that, especially having not really done a whole lot of work after that. A couple other notes, like there's very, very few images to update. There's only 43 resource images, and it includes a lot of things that it was very commonly used buttons and banners and things like that aren't necessarily completely unique. The maintenance and updates are like, it's a bonus. Like I could have done that, but I didn't. It was just a self-sustaining app. Like that's what was really cool about it. It was an easy code to work with. My developers loved it. They were like, yeah, this is super easy. And I just had so much additional potential to do with this code. So it was working for users, right? Because it got a lot of value from it. And it was working for me because it was a lower cost in building my own app, and it was less risky. It was profitable. It was just like, it wasn't it was just like doing its thing, which was awesome. Like it was really just like a great product to have. And so I sat there and asked myself, like, was this a good purchase? And should I like continue, or should I reskin this? Should I make this better? And so I looked at this and I said, well, I could make this one app, like continue to update it and keep going. Or I could make a few more of this, few more using the source code, which obviously works, and build my marketing that way. And so that's a really important point, because I think at any given moment, you're going to ask yourself, do I update this app or do I make another one? And this was a point for me where I was like, I'm going to make another one because it accomplished my goals. It was low maintenance, it was profitable, it was working for me. Now, I always recommend updating apps for people, because often that's a great way to become profitable. So if your app isn't doing what you want, or it's not where you want to be, you should update your app before you start reskinning. But I was at a place where I was like, this is great. Like, I should reskin this. And so I decided, yes, let's totally do this. So my next step, and let's do a quick wrap up before we go into the next step. I identified a trend. I found a source code that I could use to match that trend. And maybe it wasn't a perfect match. Maybe it was like, hey, I could have turned that video merger into something a little bit different if it was going to match something else. It was just like a photo with a music functionality. I did that. I made it better. I made it my own. I cleaned up the graphics. I made the marketing better. I launched it. Okay, that's what I did. That was the beginning step. That's exactly what happened. So the next step was, how can I repeat the success with the same code? And that's going to lower my overall costs. And what I mean by that is, I spent $800 on the code the first time, and let's say I spent $300 on the new graphics and the marketing and the maintenance and everything else. So let's say it's $1,100 total. Now, can I repeat the success of that first code, but the second time I do it, this is only going to cost me, let's say, $200. And so my overall costs, let's say, goes up to $1,300, but you divide that by 2, it's actually $650 per app. So that's how you lower your overall costs. Every app that you make divides the overall costs by the number of apps. Because I use a skinning model, like based off of the same systems of Henry Ford's assembly line. I have a team, or a couple teams, where I took the code and I said, here's what I want to do, and they made a new one, and it was great. And that's how you get your costs down. That's how car manufacturers get their costs down. And so the model steps, and I'm going to keep coming back to these kind of basic, the 1, 2, 3s of all this, because I think it's really helpful for all of you just to really walk through the process and know exactly what I do, what you can do when you're making these type of decisions. So the first thing, obviously, you buy a source code. That's what we just talked about. 2 is you implement graphics to create a new app. Now you can get very cute about this. You can research this all you want. You can create a new theme. But the bottom line is you find graphics and you create the new app. You make it your own. You make it something unique and that you really like. Number 3 is you add new features and updates. Now, not everyone does this in reskinning, honestly. Like, people will buy source codes and they'll slap in some new graphics and publish it. But what happens is, most of the times they come back and they go like, well, this one worked, but these 3 didn't, or this 2 worked and this one didn't. Like, why not? And I always say, well, what did you do to make this app better? And often it's like, well, I didn't do anything. And so I'm saying, you don't have to do that, but it's rolling the dice a little bit more. If you make the app better, if you do your research and you understand what problem you're solving, you're in a much better position. So I'm just saying, add some new features and add some updates. It's just a good best practice to get into. And then 4th, you hire a cost-effective developer to upload your app to the store under your account. They're going to compile all the graphics. They're going to add any new features that you've done, and then they're going to push it up into the store. That's basically how the model works. After you get it up into the store, you fill out all the iTunes Connect information. We're going to walk through this in another video. The app goes live in the App Store, and you watch the metrics pour in. They just start to get downloads, and you start to make a decision like I did with the video merger. And I say, do I update this? Do I reskin it? What do I do? And then you repeat that process. You systematize it. You make it more clear. You build out the operating procedures, and then you start to scale it. You buy more source codes. You make more reskins. You get into more stores. You do all that. And then the most important step is you go to Hawaii. This is actually a pipeline in the North Shore of Hawaii. and you have a lot of fun while you're watching this data coming in. So in short, what is the most important thing? You have to identify a winning model that people like. For me, it was Instagram. It was the photo thing. And this thing, I mean, that trend is not going away. It probably never will. And then you find a cost-effective way to make a lot of them, a lot of the product, very easily, very cost-effectively. By applying and following the simple systems, I was able to get 3 apps reskinned, submitted, and approved in less than 1 month, right? So what did I do? I took the first skin and I let it kind of roll for a year, and I said, all right, this is going well. And I never even really thought to reskin it just because I was so busy with so much other stuff. And then all of a sudden I said, why am I not reskinning this app more? And so I reskinned it 3 more times, and you can see it all came out within a month. And I just put out 4 total apps using this exact same source code. And so to sum up, the model works, because when you look at what happens with these reskins, you can see that, $270, $3,400, $170, all the 3 skins that I made were ROI positive in the first month, right? That's what I'm saying. And like I said, I can't promise that you're going to have the same kind of, revenue success. But what I can say is that this is not a fluke. This has happened to me hundreds of times. That's why I've been able to build 1,500 apps and make hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars doing it, is because this model works. Not every time, but it does work. And so you look at the initial investment, $800, and you look at the mass returns and the skins return and the total return. It just gets very, very, very powerful because the costs keep coming down. I mean, those skins cost me very little money to put out. And so I made a lot of money off of that. And so I've used the same skin model dozens of times with the same outcome. It can be a small app, it can be a huge app. I mean, this thing works all the time because it's not just about revenue, it's also about cost and lowering your risk. And this model is used in virtually every industry. I talked about this in the intro video. Think about franchising and how you can really franchise winning products. So when you find those winning trends and you find the winning source codes, and then you can take those source codes and you can say, all right, I can make this a winning product, and now I can franchise that winning product, because that works. That model, the reskinning of businesses, has been around from the turn of the century, and it'll be around for the next 100 years. It's a proven system. So the final piece of advice is this model focuses on the operations of your business, right? Because when you think about it, you're basically just gonna, at the end of the day, take a source code and you want to send it over to one person and say, turn this into a reskin. And when you think about what that entails, it's just operations. It's about, hey, do I have a developer? Do I have a designer? Do I have a publisher? Do I have a VA? And you don't need them all up front, but how do they talk to each other? How do they move it from, oh, I see a trend, I bought a source code, I'm going to send it to my project manager. How does it move from there up to the app store? And that's why your operations are so important, because the smoother that can go, the better your success of it happening, because there are a lot of moving parts in the reskinning business. And when you decide on on getting into reskinning and all that sort of thing, remember that operations are going to make or break you. And this is a really important thing about this case study, is that the operations are the reason I was able to do that so quickly. I had a project manager, I had a developer, I had a designer, I had someone to upload it all, right? But what we didn't stress about was, hey, what theme should we do? What keywords should we pick? What small details should we do? All we cared about is can we even get this done in a cost-effective and quick way? That is the difference. That is why this case study is so important, because as you're building your skinning business, realize that the operations are so important. And the theme and the keywords and the small details are great learning, and that's going to help you get started. But that's not how you grow a monster business. It's all about the operations. The ability to take a source code and then get it to the app store is the key. I mean, if you can, to get it from start to finish is the key. And that's what when people get hung up on that sort of thing, that's why they get hung up, is because they don't have the ability to get it in the app store fast enough. They can't keep publishing all the time. They can't just produce enough. And so you create a system works, and then you scale it. Okay, so the takeaway, right? So video merger was identified to work. This is number one on the reskin case study. You go and you find something that you think is a great idea. It can be the casino industry is super hot. It's going to be one of those dominant industry categories for years to come, right? Instagram, social media, messaging, I mean, utilities. It could be alarm clocks. It can be anything, right? But you just got to go out in the marketplace and say like, okay, wow, this app, they're making good money. They're not necessarily getting a lot of downloads, but it's like, this is a good product and people like it. And there's a million ways you can do that. It can be a game. It can be a photo app just like this. It can be like a basic kind of app, anything that just, you find an identification that worked. I then reskinned that source code with the same graphics, right? With some new graphics, I should say. Like, it took the same graphics and I made them new. And that was like $100, $200 a piece. That's all I did. And then each one of them made me a large return on investment because I had a system and a team and the costs were really low and everyone was on the same page and everything worked. I outsourced everything. I never even touched the code or design. And I focused on the model. I focused on how can I find winning trends, winning products, and hand them off to my operations team. And that's what I did. I didn't focus on, well, oh my gosh, we got 72 characters of awesome keywords, but we don't have the other ones, so we got to delay this for 3 days. I just said, no, like, just get it in there. Like, let's do this, and let's do it for cheap and get up there, and then let's let the market decide. And this can be applied to anything. This can be, you can get a huge game, a casino game. You can get a small video app just like this, and it'll always be the same. Last thing is, moving forward, I would update and add features based on research and reviews. I probably would have gone back and put more work into that initial app. You can see that first year, I didn't do anything except for the initial update and everything else. And if I could do it over again, I probably would redo that. I would start over, because then what I would have is I would be reskinning an even better app. And that would be, you can imagine what the ROI on that would have been. So that's something to think about too, is if you do invest in the updates and the features, realize that if you reskin that, you're reskinning an even more powerful app. This can be done by identifying source code and then turning it into a better app. So I think the number one thing that you might see this case study and go, okay, cool, but this is only for Instagram. And what if I identify a trend that's like, dating app, right? Like, and you say, oh, well, I want to go find a dating source code. What I'm saying to you is you don't need to think like that. You can go and you could use this source code, or you can use, any source code and say, how can I turn video merger source code to capitalize on the dating world, right? Do you see what I'm saying? That is how it becomes a better app. It's because you're applying it to a winning trend that's happening. And then you just dump it into your system and everything works out. That's why it's so powerful. And this is not always the norm. Like I said, I'm not saying that every time you're going to make a ton of money or ROI is going to be huge, but it does show that the model works. It shows that how this happens is very, very powerful, very proven, and that you can have huge success. And this is just the beginning of it, right? Like, imagine if you had these 4 source codes, or these 4, reskins, I should say, and you just start updating them like crazy, and you start really looking at the data and listening to reviews and creating, all these marketing campaigns. You could blow that up and make it a huge win for you. And so that's the case study. That's what the video merger case study is all about. It's been very successful for me. I'm really excited about that app. And I'm also really excited just to show you all the other apps that I've been working on and the source codes that you have access to. It's great. So we'll talk more about this and some other apps in the next couple of videos, and I'll see you then.